The saying goes that the eyes are the windows to one's soul. And unmistakably, there's a dancing intensity reflecting from the two shining panes of our next guest. Raúl Alvarez is a high-octane communication strategist during the week, and on weekends, he trades his business suit for basketball shorts and plays some of the most fervent over 40 roundball in the city of Grand Rapids. He's here today to talk about personal identity and getting stuff done. Raúl, welcome to Feel Like You Belong, my friend.
Wow, I do feel like I belong now after that introduction, Alan. Thank you. It's great to be here.
We had a chance to chat.
Yes.
So, off the bat, basketball. If we were to line up everybody in the studio and someone to say, point to the basketball player, you might not be the first person they picked.
I'm not sure if it's because of what I look like or because I'm short, right?
Well,
I never made any basketball teams in high school, by the way, because of that. The coach basically said, don't try out, you're too short. And I said, tell me something I don't know about.
So tell me about your love of basketball.
Well, it has to do with, I've always enjoyed sports anyway, between running, basketball, and tennis, which are my top three sports that I enjoy. It's an adrenaline for me. Of basketball in particular, because I don't play under the basket as a little guy. So as a point guard, I'm the strategist. I'm the one driving the team. And I've been known to yell at guys, even if it's just friendly basketball. But we did win the championship, I don't know how many times in high school, intramural, a couple championships, intramural basketball at Michigan State, because I wasn't recruited by them, obviously. But, but you know, it's a strategy because, you know, as the point guard, you literally are the leader. So you're taking a look at the entire team, you know, the layout of the half court, and you're strategizing. Who's going to set the pick? Who's going to roll? How am I going to dish the ball? Am I going to drive the lane and then dish it to the big guy who can score? And that's what I love about the game. You know, it's no different than, you know, I hate to say it, but kind of life in a way, the strategies we use, you know, in everyday life and what we do personally and otherwise.
Yeah. And that same energy that you take to the basketball court, you bring to your daily work. GTSD group. Tell us about that. And what does that mean?
Well, that's the legacy my late father left me, and it stands for Get the Stuff Done. A G-rated version, I have to say.
Okay.
But, you know, it's the legacy he left us. I mean, we came from a family of 8 kids, mom and dad, moved to the States when I was 6. We made our base home in San Antonio, Texas, but then in the summer we traveled throughout the States just following the crops. You know, when you have that many kids, that's just extra income during the summer.
Sure.
Although the 3 youngest ones of ours, I was the 3rd youngest, I was then responsible for taking care of the 2 little ones. I was not allowed to work the fields, even though cousins my age and younger were working the fields. Our parents really instilled that the 3 youngest would not do that, and then we'd enroll in summer school, and so it started way back then, the whole get the stuff done, because they understood. You know, and when I was the first to go to college and earn a degree, that was when, you know, my parents realized they had done the right thing. But that always stuck with me, the way they operated. I remember some of the things my dad used to do that left that legacy, if I may. So there was one. There was one instance where, during the day, so sun up to sundown is basically when you work, 7 days, a Sunday here and there to go to church, and then some time off, or maybe half a Sunday. But it was in California, and it was a fig crop. Again, I was not allowed to work. I took care of my 2 younger siblings, and then every once in a while I'd help carry water out to the fields, whatever. So the sun had gone down, and everyone else had left. We traveled with an extended family, aunts, uncles, and a lot of cousins. And everyone else had left. And so everyone's excited. My older siblings are excited because it's time to go home. Shower, just chill for a few hours, and then we're back at it. My dad says, well, we're going somewhere else today. We're going to continue working. And so as we drove to a different orchard, so they had the fig trees, and then that was fresh. These were dried figs, and they were already on the ground, right? And so the idea was, it was extra income now because we're making more income at that point by picking the ones on the ground. There was no light, and that's what my older siblings kept saying. But Dad, how can we see what we're doing? And my dad said, not a problem. So he backs up the pickup and points it with the headlights on to the row of trees, and he goes, let's go. That's what you do, man. You find ways to get things done.
Done.
Part of what that was that summer was because he ended up paying cash for a new truck, and we didn't know that. Okay. But that was anyway. So you know, you find ways to do those things.
So in your family culture, that spirit is already there.
Yeah, you know, it's and you always find ways to get things done, but and there's always a lot to do, whether it's in a personal, you know, careers, if you're involved in the community, those kinds of things. And I remember my older siblings, in particular 2 of my older sisters, who for many years worked 2 jobs to help support the family and what have you, sacrificing their own education. So, part of that legacy comes from them, but it all came from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my dad, who used to visit me when I was at Michigan State, my parents, first out of 8 kids, never been away from the family for extended periods. It's really tough. So now I went from Holland to Michigan State, 2 very different cultures. Now I'm away from mom and dad. So for me, I almost, the concept of literally, I don't know if I can do this, but there was some pressure there, right? And never had any siblings that attended college like some of my friends. I didn't know what it was about.
You were pioneering.
So at any given point, my parents would come up for coffee. Denny's, right on on Grand River in Okemos, right by campus. But they'd come up at late at night, right? So I'd call collect. We didn't have cell phones at the time, so it was really expensive. But if they knew I was, getting to that point where I don't know if I can do it, they'd drive up from Holland, 11 o'clock, have coffee. They'd leave at around 1 or 2, just in time for really my dad to get ready to go to work and mom to get ready to cook for the day and what have you. So, and they never once said no to doing that. They never flinched about it. That's a kind of legacy that you just can't go wrong with, right?
Your kid needs support, you go and do that.
You do what you have to do,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And now as a parent, it's interesting, as a parent, that's just ingrained in you.
Sure.
It's innate at that point,
Sure.
right? So
Tell me more about GTSD Group.
well, it's a big staff of me, right?
Right. But now you worked in corporate communications earlier in your career.
Yeah, yes, in fact, and it spans kind of all over. I mean, I'm a political junkie because that's part of what I started at Michigan State, in addition to economics and communications. And I did work in politics for a while for Carl Levin at the time, right out of college, and a congressman at the time, and learned a lot from it. But in addition to that, corporate, like a Delta Dental Plan in Michigan, did some work for a large credit union in Genesee County for 8 years prior to moving to Grand Rapids, doing corporate PR and director of PR and marketing. Did some great and fun work with GRCC here, which is why we moved to Grand Rapids. For many years, I did private PR counsel for a group of eye doctors in addition to full-time employment, because that was at the time we decided my wife would stay home full-time with the girls. So that was
So that
great.
extra thing was sort of like picking up the figs, right?
Yes. See, and that was exactly, again, it's one of those. And a lot of it has to do with not only that, because quite honestly, as a social worker, and this is amazing, but as a social worker, I actually was making more in that part-time consulting gig I was doing for a group of eye doctors than she was making, as a social worker. And of course, you throw in the child care cost into all of that. It just made sense. And
Sure.
so we followed our accountant's advice and did that. But I have a passion for it, which is what I enjoy doing that.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
So, it's one of those where, and at some point I was reminded of what my parents did. I would never say I did exactly or as much as they did. That's just because so like when that example, so for 15 years I did that, even in addition to full-time employment. And people have asked me, but how did you keep them separated? Well, see, I'd go to that office, because I had an office there at the doctor's office. I'd go there from like 4:30 to 5 a.m. to like 7:30 a.m., then go to the full-time job, the corporate gig, and then continue at night. Again, you do what you have to do at that point. But,
Sure.
but having a passion for it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So tell me about your day job, your current day job. What kinds of things do you do over the course of the day?
Well, here's what I enjoy about what I do now. The diversity of what I do is what I enjoy. I mean, I'll go from writing and talking to media, or writing. I'm a professional storyteller, is what I tell people, right? I help clients tell their story. So one day I might be writing a press release or a story for an economic development nonprofit group. Another, I might be setting up a live shot for a local TV station to go visit one of the local restaurants who's been a client for a while now. Or I might be helping a large corporation reach out to more diverse group of individuals, engaging them. Or I might have one of the newest ones that I'm excited about is a local restaurateur who says, hey, I need some help branding. And we were introduced by mutual friends downtown Grand Rapids, and so helping put that strategy together. There's a lot of good restaurants in Grand Rapids, downtown Grand Rapids.
Absolutely.
How do we brand, his restaurant? So every day is different. Somewhere in there I sprinkle in some nonprofit, some pro bono work or volunteer work, which I always enjoy. And every day is different. When I do these presentations, I'm very fortunate to be invited to Grand Valley and GRCC and others to go and talk to PR classes, just for a special guest type deal. And I'm always asked the same question. Tell us about your typical day. And I said, there's no such thing, right? The beauty of that. Of course, people look at it and say, boy, Raúl, must be nice to have the flexibility. Yeah, not so. There's always plenty to do, right?
Right. And really, you're at the beck and call of every different client.
Oh, there's no
so,
doubt.
yeah.
There's no doubt. And you get to the point where, I mean, a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, when I was still with CC, I remember getting a call on Thanksgiving night. I get a call from one of the local TV stations. They were doing a big story on something that affected, the college, and I was at my in-laws celebrating Thanksgiving dinner. But I took the call, and my wife doesn't flinch at that anymore. My phone's never off. It's always by my side. But that's what you do, because that's part of the passion, obviously, and the commitment that you have to clients who are relying on the counsel and helping tell the story.
Sure.
And
when
find ways
people
to think
engage you,
differently.
they also know that they're getting that's part of the package.
Absolutely.
That your full attention.
And that field is 24/7. I mean, it didn't used to be. I mean, it did, but in a different way. Now everyone's connected.
Well, especially
Everyone
with
is connected,
social
right?
media.
Sure. So now you add that to the mix. But throughout all of that, Alan, one of the other lessons I learned from my late father is the whole concept of what happens when you do fail, right? And I have to throw that in because it happens. And it's just you have two options, right? Or a number of options. The first one is you throw out a few choice words here and there, and you get out of it, get out of your system.
Right.
But you just keep going, right? And you find ways to do it better. And I think through everything that we do, whether it's on a pro bono basis or what have you, but that's so critical. So part of getting the stuff done is realizing you're going to run into that roadblock. You're going to run into that difficult client. You may fail at some point, and you just go back at it again and go. And the question that's always asked, that I always ask, is what's next? What's next, right? So
I want to go back a little bit to your family's history, because your folks came from Mexico, and what was that part of your family's immigrant story?
Well, at the time, it was a pull factor from the States, right? The economy was struggling in a major way in Mexico. And we had aunts and uncles that had moved to the States. When we moved here, they had been here maybe 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So what year did your family come?
1970.
Okay.
So I know I don't look that old, and I appreciate that, Alan. So I was 6 when we moved here. Don't do the math. But, and there was that pull factor of there's a better opportunity, right? There's nothing, it's not an adage, it's true that there is opportunity here, right? So, and that's a whole other conversation of how you really take advantage of that and make it happen. But that's what it was. And my aunts and uncles, again, and they had even larger families than we did. There's plenty of work. And when you're not following the crops, there's construction work in Texas, and you follow that. So, but what's interesting was, so that's why we moved here. So we lived there for 6 years. We ended up in Holland, Michigan by mistake. Now think about that, San Antonio, Texas to Holland, Michigan.
How can you take a wrong left turn?
Wow, yeah. With no GPS back then, right? And limited English, I think. We actually were following the crops when we moved to Holland, but the year was so bad in Michigan and Ohio, the crops were, that we ended up, and we were actually supposed to be in the Ohio area. We had friends that had moved to Holland for the construction industry part, and they invited us to stay, and that was that. It was interesting. So 2 years being in Holland, we thought we missed San Antonio, Texas so much. So we moved back, and then a year later, we decided we missed Holland, Michigan so much. And we came back and made this home since then, which was in the late 70s at that point.
Awesome.
So.
We're going to have to wrap up in a moment, but the theme of our show is belonging. What is your understanding of belonging? And if you could frame it, right now there's a very contentious national dialogue about who belongs and who doesn't. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're telling us it's time to wrap up and you throw that question at me. I think it has to do with a number of things. The same types of things that I always said that being a natural leader, or being a leader should be. The first one's empathy, right? The other one is literally just being humble. Humility is such a, and I say that because if we all learn to be a little more humble, I think we'd be able to have more empathy and literally just be able to say, okay, I get you.
Yeah.
I know you speak different, you look different, you have a better tan than me, but I get you, right? Because we're all here for the right reason, for the same reason, right?
Right.
And I think that's what's missing. We get into this clash of cultures, and ultimately it's like, wait a minute, I understand. Because probably my relatives from way back when probably went through something similar, and they did,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So let's make this happen. And I think that's what's missing, right? The humility, which leads to the empathy piece. which leads to the connectedness. And I think that's part of what we're missing. And when we first moved here, by the way, we were very fortunate when we first moved to the States to be welcomed, not only by relatives, but people in the community, from churches and other organizations in Texas.
Okay.
And in Holland, too. I think part of why I enjoy working and volunteering for different organizations is because I remember when we moved to Holland, how we were helped by different organizations. And this is just that way of saying, you know what, I remember that. Let's see what we can do to pay it back.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're going to have to leave it go there, but I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome.
24 member organizations in 12 states.
Okay.
And we try to build their capacity so that they can not only provide better services wherever they're located, but they can then collectively come together and advocate on behalf of issues that are